land, it's your land.
President Trump are clashing in Berkeley, California. This video.
This land is my land.
From
California.
This great state of California, one of the most progressive states in America, is on board the political revolution. Thank you.
And welcome everyone to Progressive California. Glad to have you here. This week's show is going to be a little bit different because our lovely co-host Joseph Sakata is on spring break and off having a wonderful time doing God knows what. But we have our friend Adriel Hampton back with us. He was part of a big event in San Francisco yesterday for progressives called Rock the Congress. And he's going to talk a little bit about what that was about and what they discussed there. He's also going to go into some reporting about who to watch in progressive candidates, what's going on in California, an update on what Gail McLaughlin is doing with her Gale Force campaign, and also a little update on what's happening with the lieutenant governor's race, because things are getting interesting there. Welcome, Adriel. So glad that you are here with us today.
Great. Thank you for having me, Laura. And I apologize for the background here. I'm not phoning it in from bed. Well, I sort of am. I'm up in Sutter Creek for my sister's wedding tomorrow. It's a Monday wedding. And, one of the things I've been doing actually over the past months is just trying to find places in California I've never visited and go. And it's funny is I know I've driven through parts of Sutter Creek, but I don't think I've really actually stopped in downtown Sutter Creek. So this is new. I was up at Lake County a couple of weeks ago, and I just love this state. And as you know, I work with Gail McLaughlin's campaign, and it's really important to me to find out not just where are all the people, because we know that a lot of them in Southern California, a lot of them in the Bay Area, but what's going on in California? What environmental issues are there? What economic issues are there, and having a lot of fun. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's a big ass state. You got lots of places.
It's a big ass state. So. It is. When you think about elections, and you think about that, like a lieutenant governor campaign in a primary needs 1.5 million votes.
Right.
It's insane. There's no other state like California. Yeah. Texas isn't even at our level.
Yeah. We keep it dense. So Rock the Congress, all day event in San Francisco yesterday. How many people attended? What is Rock the Congress and what was that about?
Yeah, absolutely. So Rock the Congress is an event meant to bring together activists from all kinds of different groups that are working to turn California and the nation blue. And it was interesting for me, who's more of I describe myself as a leftist or a socialist, but I am a member of the Democratic Party and have done, I ran for Congress as a member of the Democratic Party in 2009. And I work with a lot of Democrats. Gail's an independent. This particular event was really geared towards the federal races because California is going to be the place where if we can elect several Democrats and unseat several Republicans in the Congress in California, that will really help turn the tide and have a Democratic majority. So what you saw at Rock the Congress were folks from groups like Swing Left, Sister District, which is where they're trying to associate people in deep blue areas like San Francisco with fellow Democrats or liberals, progressives in red districts or swing districts. Also, a lot of people there, I believe, from Indivisible. The challenge on Saturday in San Francisco is just that this event was planned before the March for Our Lives.
Yes, I bet that was an interesting.
Yeah, we were concerned. So I was presenting basically on how to really how to run a campaign, how to create a campaign plan, and then create metrics around your campaign plan. And my friend Jay Carmona, who is the founder of Semitonic Strategies. And Semitonic that's the way that ants create their nests kind of independently of each other.
Interesting.
She really focuses on how do you create, how do you use networks and distributed teams to create campaigns. And so a lot of her consulting is about taking small groups of people who are kind of self-replicating and go out and and take initiative. And we'll see some clips from her presentation a little later.
Yeah.
But the attendance was good, even despite the competing events. We were happy. I was wondering if, I was actually worried. I thought maybe it'll get called off, or maybe it'll be 3 people in our session. But we did like a 2-hour workshop that was really down in the weeds, with calculators and numbers, like how do you reach your win number? How do you assign costs to your field efforts? And also, how do you chart out the progress you need to make as a campaign in order to win?
Right. Did you share some of use those calculators that last time you were on the show? We went through of those, and those were very fascinating.
Yeah. And one thing that I'll just shout out, that if you go to bit.ly, bit.ly/rock the Congress -2018-03-24. So yesterday's date, that's all undercase. So it's bit.ly/rock the Congress.
Is that the link to the documents?
I
will have that in the description.
You'll have that. Great.
I'll have that in the description of the video. It's not there yet, but it will be.
So look down at the description of the video when you're watching on replay. And that document it's like gold, because Jay and I both get paid fairly well to do this kind of work for campaigns and for organizations. And we also like to just give it away, because we want activists to have these tools, because the corporations and the corporate candidates, they can afford to buy strategists like ourselves, and they can also afford a lot more paid media.
Yeah. Well, set us up a little bit, because we've got several clips from Jay's presentation, which was where she was describing in a lot of detail the model of an engagement cycle using tech for campaigns, and we're gonna walk through a little bit of that. So just refresh us. Who is she talking to, and who really needs to take what she's saying to heart and really listen?
Yeah. So what I really liked about Jay's presentation, we actually were practicing it on Friday, and she lives in San Jose, and I was down there. We were doing kind of live demo. And some of the things she was saying, I was like, oh gosh, I need to remember that for my campaigns, for Gail's campaign and others, and make sure that we are talking about this. She's talking to people who are running campaigns, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily paid staff. And a big thing to emphasize is that you can run campaigns with a very lean paid staff if you empower volunteers, and if you have a direction. She calls it an engagement cycle, where you're taking people from these low commitment, high volume activities. This could be Facebook advertising or search ads, or this is often digital, because digital allows us to capture information and move people through an engagement cycle in a way that mail and TV do not. So she's gonna start. I think you've got a few clips to show us.
Yeah, let's look at the first one where she really talks about just the name of what the name of the game is at the top level.
And Jay Carmona from Sematonic Strategies.
This generally. So basically, the name of the game is capture people's contact information, right? Here, to super simplify it down. That's why we have this tech. That's why we have digital content, right? So it's also a little bit like a first little toe into a content strategy, right? What does the content need to do? And at this phase, we're talking about getting people's info, or actually getting them to the next step over here, which is actually, it says RSVP page for a call or an orientation. So basically, we're trying to get folks to come to something, right? Maybe not in person, maybe it's volunteer orientations. I frequently will recommend, actually not frequently, all the time recommend that they're a web conference, video conference, and an in-person sort of portion, so people can come both of those ways, and then also call in. Question in the back? Yes.
What's your preferred volunteer orientation web?
Ooh, I want to tell you that, but I'm going to tell you that I have this, but it's all tech names of tools, actually, and I'm going to show you that next. I'm just trying to get through this. So the other thing that you
can tell John, I think that's probably the end of that bit. Let's show that model engagement cycle graphic again. So she's talking about on the left. Adriel, maybe you can just expand on
absolutely.
All different sources where information comes in from the very beginning when they're contacted.
Yeah. So It's interesting because no matter what domain you're in, whether it's politics or government or some kind of consumer-oriented marketing, it's really easy to get tangled up in what tech should I use. And what I really like about what Jay is saying here is she's saying that this engagement cycle, you can fill in the tech tools later once you understand what you're doing, who you're trying to reach, where their data is ending up, what needs to happen with them next, and then what's the outcome you want. So in this model engagement cycle, she's spec'd out a high volume campaign. And this is like, I'm not kidding, like a $3,000 to $5,000 piece of information that like a campaign would kind of have designed, and it would have the tech on the back. But Jay actually, in the resources doc that'll be in the notes for this show, she also gives you that. She gives you the, well, these are the tech tools you can plug in. And what she's talking about is that left to right, you have these mass outreach activities, and they're going to drive into a CRM or an email list that's going to allow you to reach back out and turn some percentage, and it's usually a very small percentage, of those people you've reached into activists, and you're going to train them. And then after you've trained them, they're going to go out and do the work of the campaign, whether it's calling or canvassing or GOTV. And that probably brings us to the
okay. Yeah, let's do the second clip where she talks about a little bit more about the engagement cycle.
Like fill these things in. The other cool thing about the engagement cycle is that you can actually tell not only what the current step someone might be on is, but you can tell the next step after that. Right? And the reason why you want to always know the next step is because you got to write the content for it. You got to get that page published. You got to get folks with the content training there, right? And so this actually enables you or your digital team or your volunteers or whomever to actually have the steps ready in advance. And the other piece, right, is that there are parts of the cycle that don't like end. Right? Parts of this cycle, this is a constantly moving machine, right? Every machine that moves has parts that break occasionally, right? And so one of the things that I'm teaching in my consultancy right now is actually training folks to be mechanics on these machines. And if you want to train mechanics, you actually have to have a diagram of the machine, right? And so that's what this is. The other cool thing about engagement cycles, and Adriel and I were talking about this yesterday while we were rehearsing, but it enables you to really quickly communicate why you have the tech and what the tech is trying to do. Like, say at your volunteer orientation, you can be like, this is completely open sourcing a lot of your campaign, right here. Hey volunteers, here's why we want you to run volunteer orientations. Here's why we're trying to recruit you to be volunteer leaders. Here's why, here's how you matter, and here's why we've made the decisions about, the decisions that we've made about what the tech is and why it's important, right?
Okay.
Okay, so middle.
Stop there, right there, John.
Yeah, so
one of the things that she spoke about in the earlier part that wasn't in the clips was the importance of CRM, you know, customer relationship management, and having that's the one tool and the one crux that that so much of this engagement cycle rests on, is having a way to organize all of the various information that comes in. And I think she describes, you know, how many people do you know who try to do all this on a spreadsheet versus technology that really will bring all of the different inputs and then organize it into that middle section. Did I get that right? Yeah.
And the challenge there, she also talks a lot about having, basically there's three elements that are really key because other things are going to depend on them. Mm-hmm. Those are events, donations, and your email list. Mm-hmm. So you kind of want a CRM that brings all those things together.
Right.
So we went on in this presentation because we talked for about 2 hours. Mm-hmm. I gave a lot of information on how to look at the metrics and both project metrics and also kind of keep updating your plan, updating your cost structure, figuring out if what you're doing is effective. Mm-hmm. What Jay is showing I really like, because it just says, hey, that you have to know what your people are doing. You have to make sure your donors are on your email list and can be searched. And it depends a little bit what kind of campaign you're running, exactly what you do with CRM. If it's a really large fundraising operation, you might want a CRM that has extremely robust donor search capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
In my campaigns, I use a tool called Action Network that's
Right.
specifically developed by a nonprofit to be a hub for digital organizing. But it doesn't have everything. So in the session, I mentioned that, for example, we have some data in our canvassing tools. We have some advanced fundraising data in Act Blue for not for Gail's campaign, but for other campaigns. What she's saying is you have to track this information, or it just gets lost, and that's something that we kind of all know, but you want to start right from the top. Like, are we putting our data in the right place? The other important thing that she said in that clip was she was talking to folks in the room. Our audience was mostly hardcore volunteers, only a handful of actual campaign staff, like paid people. And we think that that an important thing for volunteers to know is, where do they fit in, and where can they contribute? Because then they can help take this next level. If they're just a volunteer who has to be told what to do all the time, you're not able to scale. And so Jay's entire practice is about, like, how do you, and we'll see if she talks about it in the third clip. If she doesn't, I'll focus on it a little. But you want it to be a kind of a self-replicating machine.
Right.
She said that you have to fix the machine when it breaks. Absolutely true. And my calculators are meant to do that. Like, if we start seeing that we're spending way too much money on one kind of engagement, or if it's costing too much to ID a voter through one kind of engagement, then we have a problem. And we either have to retrain the volunteers, we have to update the scripts, we have to identify an error. And I'll say, like, in running recent campaigns, we've overspent. I've had to give clients credit for, like, going too fast and trying to we'll talk about it a little bit more, and as we talk about the kind of landscape in California.
Right.
But it's so important for progressives who are doing some of these things for the first time. I've never run a statewide campaign, and I'm like, teaming up with Gail and her campaign manager, and it's because progressives are greener at this in many ways, especially the folks who came up through the Bernie movement. And so there's a lot more energy around progressive politics, but the knowledge base remains with, like, DNC and DCCC types. Right.
These are all people who, like you said, came up through the Bernie campaign, aren't used to having a lot of funds to start with or working with tools like these.
Jay is good because she has been around for 15, 20 years, where I'm newer to, I ran for Congress in 2009, but I fell on my face. Yeah. So, then it's like, how do you get better? How do you help progressives take it to the next level?
Well, let's watch the third clip where she talks to kind of about how the funnel of where the information goes across that flowchart and humanizes it.
In the internet world, right, looking at social content, seeing news stories, by the way, are right here, which go to Google search results, which go to, ideally, your website.
And I think you were saying the most engaged people are over on the right, but you have to start out and move them through that journey.
Yes.
I thought you meant where are the most people working.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly. Right. So number of people, big, but engagement is really low. So that's why this is called an engagement cycle. The job that this machine is trying to do is it's trying to take these low engaged people, and by low engagement, I think that's kind of like a depersonalizing word. It's actually cooler to say, like, they don't have, like, a good relationship of trust with you, right? We're talking about the arrow for trust, right, is like going this direction. We have to be able to build relationships of trust with humans. And so this is a machine that is helping you as a campaign and you as volunteers and you as staff build a stronger relationship with these humans until they will go out for you multiple times until their feet hurt, doing canvassing, and they will come back and do it the next day. Now that takes trust. So that's what this machine is trying to do. And when we say high engagement, it's just like high trust, right? I like to rehumanize these things a lot. Questions?
Yeah, that was the end of that one.
Yeah, so the one piece, Laura, that I'd really add is the top right of that engagement cycle is the place where you take your star volunteers and you turn them into volunteer leaders. And Jay was just she kind of, like, it was almost like a slap for me because it's something that I knew from some of the work. If you read about the Obama campaign and how it was successful, if you read about just distributed campaigns, but Jay has been working on this stuff for a long time. And she says, you can have this whole engagement cycle working, but it only works as well as like your basically your staff, right? And their ability to keep people engaged. She really recommended using your candidate and your staff to fire people up and to have those relationships of trust. But what you actually need is these volunteer leaders who then go out and they train a group of other volunteers on how to train other groups of volunteers to train other groups of volunteers.
Right.
And then your highest engaged people end up becoming a machine that turns a smaller group of people into canvassers, into voter contact folks. And then again, you're always just replicating that. So you've got this other wheel within the wheel that's spinning off these kind of self-replicating nodes.
Yeah.
And that
I do have one more clip that I think covers that.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
Oh, I'm sorry, John. No, John shook his head. I'm sorry, John.
I counted 3. You did 4?
I know. I had a note of, I had an extra one. If you can bring it back up and find it for me, great. If not, never
I'm
mind.
going to need a few minutes because I actually wiped it off the tab. So
don't worry about it, because I think it's exactly what Adriel just said, was that making this flow chart, and it's the scalability. She was saying that the technology that she's describing in that chart is something that you could scale up to cover 30 campaigns or something.
Right. Yeah. So the interesting thing, and this is we were going to talk a bit about Gale Force and something that Gale is trying to do with the corporate free progressive movement. And also with the effort we're putting into her campaign to reach voters throughout the state.
Right.
Can we help others? And the thing is these models are very replicable. You have to feed the model with a large number of contacts on the front end. You're running for, this is the thing that's challenging about running for office is that, if you're running for Congress, that's really prime time. And I'll say something, I guess, that this is critical. But it's also something I think that we need to talk about as a movement. I was working on Gale's endorsements, and as we were looking at progressive candidates, it was literally like all men running for Congress, and they were all inexperienced men. They hadn't held previous office. And then if you look at the women, they're all coming up through the city councils. And like Gale is running after having held office for 12 and a half years.
Right.
But you see, you have to do the work. You have to do the voter contacts. You have to have the experience, because I think it's challenging. Jay was talking about trust, right? If someone researches your candidate, say like, you're able to raise enough money to get some hundreds of thousands of voter contacts, then they research your candidate. And if that candidate doesn't have a history of that backs up their rhetoric, then a lot of voters are still going to fly away. So this work isn't easy at all, but I'm really encouraged, for one, like, we got invited to go do a training, and like, I'm a raging leftist, and Jay is really forward thinking. It's not none of this traditional, send a lot of mail, use a really big branded CRM. You notice she didn't talk about any brands.
No, she didn't. I noticed that.
Yeah. And she did later in the session, but she, give all kinds of different options that'll slot into the different functions that you need.
Oh, great. Well, it sounds like it was an amazing event. Are they going to be having more of these events?
I think they will. This was the second one. And I got involved because I went to the California Solidarity Conference a couple months ago, and I met one of the organizers of Rock the Congress. Jay spoke at the first one on a different topic. I don't know if they'll have more this cycle or not, but I think it's something they really want to keep up. And, and this is the other thing, is 2018 is a huge year for us. But we have to keep it going. We have 2020, we got to elect Bernie Sanders president. We got to elect more progressives to Congress. We have to elect. One of the shocking things to me is if you look at members of the Progressive Caucus in Congress, a lot of them just take just truckloads of corporate PAC money. So we just have a lot of work to do, and we can do a lot of it quickly, which is why we're trying to get out a lot of this information.
Yeah, we got 2 months till the primary, so I think we need to stop planning for it and start doing it. So, well, to that end, tell us a little bit about Gale Force. What is Gale Force, and why should we be interested in what we're doing here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Gale Force is the name comes from an article that was written about Gail McLaughlin in the East Bay Express. They did a nice cover story that the title was Gale Force. And we started thinking about a big part of the Richmond Progressive Alliance that Gail and others co-founded in 15 years ago was really progressive solidarity and coming together regardless of party and saying, we need to stand up for progressive values and also not take money from corporations. And this is where a movement like the Progressive Alliances really departs from like where the Democratic Party has been, because the Democratic Party has both at a state level and a national level really taken to being funded by large corporate donations. So with Gale Force, what we're doing is we're trying to say, one, Gail she's raising and spending more money than most progressive candidates do, not than all of them, but more than most. And we're trying, hopefully to use that money really, really efficiently to get the word out about corporate free, about progressive values, things like banning fracking, passing universal healthcare on demand in California, building more affordable housing, cracking down on guns and the sales without background checks here in California. And
I like the way that she distilled it down to
thought, how to.
That was the NSA. They just kind of looped in for a second there. They heard you mentioning guns.
They heard some keywords. Oh my God. So so you've got the one unifying principle up there, which is these are progressives who are rejecting corporate influences in their elections, and so there are people of all parties who have progressive values and are not taking corporate money. There are definitely, in the progressive movement in California, I've heard people start to talk about corporate progressives. And these are people who have generally progressive values, but they take corporate money. And when push comes to shove, are obviously for folks who follow this, you're concerned that they will then flip, on things like net neutrality or single payer healthcare. So we've been talking a lot in Gail's campaign about like, how do we get aspirational? We know what we don't like. How do we talk about what the world looks like when corporate free progressives are in power? And, you still have people doing work and an economy, but you don't have the biggest corporations having the most influence on our elections and who gets elected and how we govern ourselves. So Gail and her team are going kind of up and down the state in races of all sizes, school board up to Congress, House and Senate, and some statewide races, and making endorsements. And the next step in that is to say, hey, can we expand out of that and do some work together? Can we do voter contact together, some volunteer events together? And we're just starting to roll that out. So we do want anyone who wants to be part of that to reach out to us.
Any party, and that's part of that statement before, is whether you're a Democrat, Green, Peace and Freedom, or no party. The Gale Force message goes across all of those things. And then the message I really like the mission statement. We can only win the world we want by demanding change, building a movement, and electing the people who can deliver. And that is, that's critical. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. Is like the races we're watching. Who can actually win them? There's some where it's just where people are in many races where they may not have a chance, but we also have some where they really do have a chance, and we're going to be looking at those a little bit later.
Yeah, and I think it's great that progressives are contesting races all over the map, but when you think of money and time and the resources, like as a movement, I want to see us send not just Democrats to DC, but some progressives to DC. We'll talk a little bit about the congressional races in California.
Yeah, we've got our next couple of slides. We've got the 7 congressional races that Gail calls out really specifically.
Great. Yeah. So you got Jason Kishnev in District 5. We all know Stephen Jaffe in District 12. That's a race that's got more interesting. After several months after Stephen, we've had 2 more progressive Democrats enter, and District 25, Jess Phoenix is a really exciting progressive candidate.
She's our guest next Sunday, by the way. I should just
fantastic. A friend of mine worked on her campaign for several months early on. It's exciting stuff. In District 29, we've got Angelica Duenas. And I'll wait for your second slide. I haven't memorized all of them. We have about 24.
Made it big enough to
see. Most of these
John
guys.
Peltzer. Thank you. Yeah, John is, my understanding is that he's a massive single payer advocate. So I'm really excited about his race. Kenneth Mejia in District 34. He ran in the special election last year and is continuing to run again. Most of the folks who ran that special election have moved on. And then Miguel Zuniga is a hardcore burner, and he was, I believe his background is that he was a Dem exit after Bernie 2016, and he stood up and ran. And as I say, like, I've done this. It is very, very difficult, and we want, especially for some of these folks who are doing it for the first time or newer to politics, we want Gale Force to be a little bit of infrastructure and support, and in the next several weeks, train action that these folks can use to strengthen their campaigns.
I want to jump in really quick. There's no questions. Oz has just been, saying, hey, Jeffrey out there, you guys, Barb, and Dina, how you doing? But this sounds a lot like, Adriel, this Gale Force, this combination sounds a lot like what we're seeing in Washington with the Washington Bernie-Crats Coalition, where they're trying to gather together all of the orgs. And I would love it if you have any time. I just want to say this: the Washington Bernie-Crats Coalition could use. They need support, and I think it would be great if we could connect Gale Force and the Bernie-Crats and bridge those gaps.
Yeah, we would love to talk. It's interesting because along with this, there's a group in California that calls itself something like the Bernie-Crats Super Progressive Alliance or something like that.
Nice.
Corporate free Bernie-Crats Super Progressive Alliance, I think. And those folks are also working on a slate similar to Gale Force. I think the one thing that Gail and the team are really rigorous about with our endorsements is just totally corporate free. We just think that, like, if you're taking, it's interesting to me because I'm a small business owner, right? I have a consulting firm, and it's a corporation because that's how you pay your taxes. And if I were to give money to a candidate from my corporation, ethically, they're darn well better, and I think legally, there'd better be some reason for me to give that money. I can't just give corporate money to candidates. So when people say, like, oh, I'm taking it from a small business because they wanted to give it with their small business check, it's very easy, and it's a clear line to say, you know what, I'm sorry, Mr. Business Owner, we don't take checks from corporations because it can create a conflict. Would you like to donate individually? And I think that it's important, and I've advocated even within this other group to say, it confuses candidates if you say, oh, you can take money from this corporation but not this one, and align the values, and if it's a law firm, LLC, you can take it. And it's like, no, just say that people are people. Corporations shouldn't be interfering in our political process. And if it's a sole proprietor, they can write a check to them, by themselves and do whatever they want with their business income. But it's I've become a little more dogmatic about the corporate free stuff working with Yale, and I think it's because it just makes sense, and it's something you can build a movement around. Movements can't have squishy edges, or people they float,
Right.
I want to jump in on that real quick before I know you want to move on, Laura, to the whatever this next is, the governor race, but I just on the corporate free thing, because you mentioned progressive candidates that are also kind of progressive, right? And so my question there is, PAC money, or our revolution is a PAC,
Right. So I think that's a great question. Well, that was a really early. So I'm the finance coordinator for the San Francisco Bernie-crats, and we are a PAC.
Right.
And so I had a discussion with Gail about that. And they have always taken money from union PACs because unions are made up of people, and the people get a voice in their union.
Right.
And corporations are made up of shareholders, but not the employees are usually not shareholders.
Right.
Unfortunately. And Gail said, yes, the San Francisco Bernie-crats as a corporate-free PAC would be okay. It's a group of members of a organization who are not corporations who are giving their money to a non-corporate PAC made of individuals.
So the DCCC doesn't count then?
The DCCC. Well, that's a good. So if the DCCC wanted to give a progressive candidate money, I would say take it, but it's never going to happen.
But it already has.
Which ones do they?
Randy Bryce and Randy Bryce would be the one I would deem progressive. It came out progressive first, and then was contracted. Our Revolution endorsed national, and then the DCCC endorsed. So I'm like, well, geez, Randy, I don't know. And then Beto O'Rourke is also a question there because Beto looks progressive, but I'm not sure. So those are my two progressive corps.
I think that. So you got to say at some point, and this is me personally, not speaking on behalf of Gail or any other organization.
Sure.
I think that you have to look at the sum. Like, is Beto O'Rourke taking, if he's only taking union and party money, you've got to decide if you're going to vote for a Democrat. Like, they have a party infrastructure that takes money, and some of it is corporate money. If he's only taking money from the party, and he's taking money, it's challenging. I want to be Republican more than I want dirty progressivism after the runoff. Like if I was in Texas, I did not support Beto O'Rourke. I was SEMA. I felt was a little bit green for running for Senate, but her policies were great. Her campaign, it was not a close race. When people say, close race is like 45-55 or 48-52.
No, but her cost per vote was insane.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Now you're going to push my button, which is cost per vote only matters if you win or if you know exactly why, how much you paid for that vote to get it.
Well, she does, but that's the thing. I mean, she got a great chunk of votes for, and the Beto campaign, if they want that chunk of Latino vote, needs to ask SEMA to be friends, and that's really what it comes down to. Is she actually has a chunk of leverage now as a progressive, and if she knows how to use that leverage, then she can.
And if you don't run, there's no leverage, right? If she had not stood up and did this, there would have been no one running to the left of Beto.
That's where I was going with it, and so for Beto, sure, do we want to see him in there instead of Cruz? Absolutely, but his policies and his voting record aren't exactly where SEMA was standing and where other Bernie-crats stand. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So.
And also, I mean, as I mentioned, I ran in 2009. I did terribly, but the debate moved to the left because I was talking about a U.S. side of Iraq, talking about legalization of marijuana, talking about net neutrality. Often, things that people don't talk about, and you've got to have a SEMA out there advocating, or else those issues aren't going to be heard.
Exactly. So, all right, thank you. I didn't mean to hijack the whole thing. Back to you, Laura.
Oh, no, that's good. No, well, just this a perfect segue, though, into our next topic, which is a kind of a development on the lieutenant governor race, right? And we've got Eleni Kounalakis for lieutenant governor. Now, she's been in the race for some time, Adriel. I had not even heard her name mentioned.
She has, she has, and she came in very, very close second for the Democratic Party endorsement.
Okay.
No one was endorsed, and that was actually her campaign's goal, was to block. So there, in the lieutenant governor's race, there are now 11 candidates.
Wow.
And there's the certification of the race will come on the 29th of this month. But you have right now a libertarian, 2 nonpartisan candidates. That's Gail's no party preference, and 4 Republicans and 4 Democrats. And Eleni, it's interesting because she really surged to come in this close second at the Democratic Party against a guy who's terming out of the Senate this year named Ed Hernandez, who's a state senator in Southern California. Ed Hernandez has the backing of the nurses union, the California Nurses Association, And he did some work to advance SB 562, which is the California single payer bill.
Mm-hmm.
The California Medical Association, which is this this filing that just came out a couple of days ago, it says that this guy Angelo Tocopoulos put in actually not 2.2, but $2 million and 20,000, $2,020,000. And it's so funny because, you know, what is the 20,000 must be like the lawyer fee for like.
Let's tack that on.
Or it's maybe it's the transaction fee for like, you know, putting that in, or it's for the fundraiser who got that donation. But this particular PAC in California says it is a PAC on behalf of Eleni Kounalakis for Lieutenant Governor 2018, sponsored by California Medical Association. The guy who gave $2 million is her dad.
Yeah.
And that CMA, the California Medical Association, is anti-single payer. So my guess is where this money goes, $2 million is a lot of money, even in a statewide race. And I believe that will go to promote her healthcare stance, which is not single payer, and maybe to attack the healthcare stance of Ed Hernandez and possibly Gail. I would like it if we get hit. You know, I feel like that you want to be important enough to get attacked by their candidate. But it's really, to me, that says, you know, nobody puts $2 million into a lieutenant governor race until now. So it's going to get really interesting really fast. And as you said, they're only a couple of months before the top two primary.
Right, exactly. So let's go and talk to, as we wrap up with you, who are the other candidates that we should be watching and supporting?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was doing some work trying to...
You got the slide up there.
Full screen, yeah.
There it is.
There we go, thank you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, I actually went through all the way from, you know, California District 1 all the way down to California District 53. And I was looking at, you know, where do progressives have a credible chance? And then we threw in District 10 where there's no progressive has a credible chance, but there's a big update. And I wanted to just kind of steer progressives' attention towards places where I'm all about vision. You know, I want to say like, oh, we can do something that's never been done. We can elect this candidate who by all rights should never be able to win. Mm-hmm. But you also want to be a realist, and you want to say, like, where are races where we can make a difference, where the campaigns have enough money that if I go and volunteer, they could win. And volunteering, Jay talked about this a lot yesterday. Volunteers are priceless. And in Gail's campaign, we've put a price tag on some of their activity to say, like, look, we're raising, you know, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars in volunteer hours. Along with the money we're raising. And every candidate needs to be thinking about like that. So in California 4, very contested race. It was one that was never supposed to be in play. And you have now 3 strong women running credible campaigns against Tom McClintock, who's just the arch conservative, awful, awful person in California who we really want out. And for progressives, I would say look at Rosa Calderon. Check out her campaign. She's endorsed by Justice Democrats. Mm-hmm. You've got, and then in California at 10, we have some bad news, which is the Our Revolution candidate, the progressive candidate, Dottie Nygaard, dropped out this month. And crazily, she dropped out after this guy, Michael Eggman, jumped in. And Michael Eggman is running for the 3rd time. And yes, would he be better than a Republican? Just a little bit, kind of like the way Doug Jones is a little bit better than Roy Moore.
A little bit.
Michael Eggman, the crazy thing, little bit, it's awful. Oh, God. So Michael Eggman, the weird thing about him is that he was an executive in a PAC called, I think it's called Red to Blue, or it's called something 7. They're aimed at 7 districts in California. Trying to flip them. And the fundraisers for that are using Barbara Boxer's list, but also Ellen Tauscher's list. And Ellen Tauscher was a blue dog when she was in Congress. I actually ran for her seat after she voted for the Iraq War. Mm-hmm. And Eggman is now the front runner, even though he recruited the other guy who was a front runner in the Democratic side. So he personally recruited someone who's now running against. And in that race, the other candidate named TJ Cox, who was doing well, moved to District 21, which is like Fresno, and is now kind of the corporate Democrat candidate down in Fresno 21. And again, like, I would rather have a corporate Democrat than a Republican, a little better. But we just kind of lost our chance for progressive in CA10, unfortunately. Then we're jumping all the way down to 25. This is where Jess Phoenix, we talked about, is in a really tough race where several Democrats are running. They're running to defeat Stephen Knight, a Republican. And Jess is one of 3 top-tier contenders. And she's very progressive. She's corporate free. She's a scientist, would just be a really amazing candidate for progressives to win on. So I want to just shout her out. And then in California 39 is another extremely difficult district where several Democrats are running. They're running for an open seat. So it got even crazier because the incumbent decided to leave office. There, Our Revolution, I believe, has endorsed Andy Thorburn. Andy's an interesting candidate. He was once arrested and jailed for union organizing. He's very progressive, very good on Medicare for all and money out. He also is wealthy, and so he's self-funding his race, which is it's rare that the progressives are the ones who have someone who can spend millions of dollars on their campaign. It's not like Illinois, where we had some pretty bad folks on both sides spending millions and millions on those races. And then finally, I wanted to talk about a race that I think you maybe, or you have Amar Kampa-Najjar coming up on a show, Laura?
Muted.
Sorry,
I'm muted. I have reached out to his campaign a couple of times. Rosa is going to be on in a couple of weeks. Jess
Great.
will be on this show again to talk about climate change on the 8th. But I have not heard from Amar's campaign.
So Amar is an interesting candidate, and it's a very difficult race. In 50, it's Duncan Hunter is the Republican incumbent, but Amar just may have the fundraising ability. He's, I don't want to mess this up. He's half Palestinian. He's half another ethnicity. He has kind of broad-based appeal. And I think that he's a candidate progressives should be checking out. I'm not going to come out and endorse him myself because we're still kind of looking at him. I know Gale Force is looking at him, but he's one that I'd ask progressives to pay attention to, because you want to think about what are races that, one, that we can unseat Republicans, or are they open, and two, are there progressives who can win? And I'm all for challenging Nancy Pelosi. She's got 3 really credible challengers right now from the left. But the math is very difficult because it's a top 2 primary. There's Republicans in the race. Trying to think if there's other. Yes, so those 4 congressional races. Forget about 10. There's no longer, to my knowledge, a real progressive Democrat running. Think about distributed campaigning, because distributed campaigning, wherever you are in California or outside California, if you care about one of these districts, you can get involved.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. As always, you are a incredible source of information for us. I think we need to have you on a regular basis just to keep us organized with all the changes coming on.
Well, I love, watching the candidate interviews that you all do, to keep myself up, right? Because I can look at it on a spreadsheet or how much money someone's raised, but you've got the people, you can figure out how legit is this a person who can, help change the world.
It's yeah, I appreciate that. I think we're all kind of learning how to put together a progressive machine here, and it's cool. I mean, you talk about grassroots, but really we're building that first progressive machine where we're vetting our candidates, we're learning how to train them, teach them what they need to do, put together the organizations to back them and fund them, and it's exciting. And thank you for being a part of it. True.
They need us.
And we need them, damn it. The kid. I was going to say this before you go. Your Gale Force quote. I don't know if you heard David Hogg on the March for Our Lives, and I'm looking for your Gale Force quote, which I'm going to lose in a second. But the statement, "We can only change the world with what we want by demanding change, building a movement, and electing the people who can deliver." And he said today in a speech, he said, "We will change America with or without these politicians." And I think that's a nice summary of that statement. It's just
it's up to us.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, thank you for joining us, Adriel.
Yeah, thank you so much, and congratulations to your sister, and have a wonderful time at the wedding, and maybe Stacy will catch the bouquet.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, the last thing I would just say is adding on to what John said there is that this progressive machine, it needs people moving and acting within it, more and more people. And we aren't going to get what we want by sitting, and we won't get what we want by just watching, but we will get what we want if we engage and we demand it and we do the work to make it happen.
Yes. Amen.
Yes.
Right on.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Adriel.
I thank you.
Okay, so next Sunday, we will not be having our regularly scheduled Progressive California because we have a big, special, interesting fundraising event. And if you haven't heard about it, you haven't been paying attention. It's called the No More Fools Day Streamathon. And John, why don't you tell us, you've been working face down on this now for weeks. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Face down? Is that
face
what
down.
It's been
face down.
That's what it's been.
Engaged, focused.
Yeah. No, I know. No, it really has
Not
been.
thumping your head on the desk.
Well, it's been a little bit of that too. But yes, we have the No More Fools Day event. Please, I just dropped a link to the Thunderclap, which is a little social thing that you can do. It doesn't hurt. You've already been data mined. Facebook has all your shit. The NSA has all your shit. All this is going to do is use your Twitter account once for an automated tweet, or your Facebook account once for. I dropped the Thunderclap link, but it's for this. So what happens is at 3:30 in the afternoon Pacific on April 1st, everybody's social media account that's joined the Thunderclap will blast out the same message saying, hey, we're all going to do this event over here, which is kind of a nice, like dropping flyers on the internet, right? So you add your social reach so that we can drop these flyers and get people to come. Why are we doing this? Because we have to fund our own, right? We just talking about it. The Democratic Party is not, National Party isn't collecting any money from progressives, but progressives don't seem to be handing money to progressives either. And we really have to drive this. We have to get everybody to understand that if we don't fund our progressive candidates, they're not going to be able to compete. And yes, we can fund them by being boots on the ground, and we need to do that too, and that's part of the machine. But those are the two things we need to do: boots on the ground, money in the pocket, because boots on the ground can't buy airtime. Right, and some of our high-level candidates, a lot of our high-end candidates, are going to need to put airtime out there. They're going to need to compete on MSM. They're going to need to have campaign flyers, all this stuff, and it's expensive. I mean, I know Adriel was talking. If you're really going to run a legit campaign, it's the $3,000 to $5,000 a month is where you're looking at. That's a lot of money. No, we're probably not going to be able to raise that kind of money, but we're not even close to getting there with a lot of these candidates. So we really have to push it out. We're going to have 15 candidates: 5 from Washington, 5 from Oregon, 5 from California. It's April 1st. I know that's Easter. So those of you that are still doing that stuff, enjoy, and then come join us at 4. You should be done with all your Easter stuff and the donuts and the food. You should be like tired. Just slam some coffee, join us. We've got music. We're gonna have guests, and then we're gonna send you to a donation link. Go to the Uphill Media website, which I did not drop in here, but I have one page, built a nice page which has all the candidates' names and a link to their donation page. And if you've already donated, which most of you have, all right, this is a very small group here. I know most of you have donated pretty much everything you've got to either us or one of our candidates or one of your candidates, or you're already volunteering. Just share the event and do the Thunderclap. Because if we can get the reach out here from our little group, then we can reach other people that have not yet donated. So that's really what I'm asking you guys to do. Help share the content, please. Use your social reach to do that and support our progressive candidates.
I just dropped a link to the promo, which you've done a brand new version of that. I think that's all ready to go. I just
Version 3.
That.
Version 3. Misspelled
Version
Hunziker the first time, and then I don't know what I did the second time, but I cut off the ending. It just disappeared.
Yeah, the ending didn't quite have the punch that it did before. And then I just dropped also a link to the web page. So please, everybody,
thank you, Laura.
Sharing is caring. So that will be our Sunday, next Sunday. And then coming up after that, John, the slide 14.
Oh, we're bad. Yep. All right.
Yeah. So, speak of the devil, coming up on the Sunday after that on Progressive California, we will have California and climate change with our guest, Jess Phoenix. Then we will have our municipal internet report with guest Ron Placone on the 15th. And then Michael Bracamontes, who is so kind to be flexible after we didn't work out last week, is coming back to talk about the housing crisis in California on the 22nd. So all kinds of goodness and interestingness coming up on.
Michael's great because he knows his stuff and he has one of the best sets ever. His tech is insane.
He does. John can't stop talking about his great lighting.
It's awesome.
There you go.
Anyway.
So that is our show for this week. So thank you everyone who was in chat. Jeffrey and Manic. Oz, I saw you there. Timbuktu, how you doing? Deanna, come all the way from Baja, California. No Germans tonight. Thank you all, because it would be really lonely doing the show if there was nobody watching. So,
I just put Adriel back in, Laura. Sorry, because we're all here still here.
Adriel. Thank you
Just all
so
say
much,
goodbye.
Adriel. So we chose a song from the our playlist that Marcus, our Burnin' German, has put together for the No More Fools Streamathon.
Thank you, Marcus.
I grabbed one of his shows. This is T-Rex. We have that.
Yeah,
Ready to
go.
Listen
What is this? T-Rex, Children of the Revolution? I'm sorry. Did you already say
Children of the Revolution. T-Rex. Mark Bowen.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Really a long lead-in. Oh, the pictures are worth looking at.